So this is one of your mandatory sessions, Workplace Violence Prevention Law and Program. And this year we're delivering it in person because by law we really have to. A vector training on this following this scenario will be fine, but according to law, we have to explain to you how we came through the development of the program and what our action steps have been based upon the assessments that we did, both through records review and through our site review. So we're going to walk you through this today, and then eventually this will be one of the vector trainings. So why? That's a good question. Another vector training, right? Why? But everyone has to do this, and it's on workplace violence prevention. So Governor Hochul last year put into place on January 4th that every public school had to now have a violence prevention program according to law. So in private industry, it was always required, but now she shifted it. And when she shifted it to public schools, she said, you have from January 4th until May 3rd to solidify that and roll it out to your staff. So the timing was somewhat horrific with it, but we used it to our advantage. We've done so much with safety and security throughout the past few years that when we took a look at some of the assessments, we said, we can utilize this to take another step forward if we do it the correct way. So the entire advisory committee, which was made up of all stakeholders and bargaining units, decided it was better to do it right and correct than to adhere to that tight timeline and just kind of pass things through without doing the work. So we met on a regular basis, and we actually concluded everything, I think it was like May 7th. So we were just a few days late. And to ensure that you had access to the training, we sent out a vector training that was not required, but if you chose to just review it, you could. We decided that we would do the main training and open with everybody, including our new teachers, so that it wasn't redundant and we had to redo it again. So you can see that under this law, that we had to have a policy within the first 30 days. And we did that. You'll see that the policy was adopted on February 7th, and then we've already revised it on May 1st, just according to new guidance that came in. We had to do a risk evaluation within 60 days, and that was twofold, and you're going to see some of the results from that. It was a records review. That was one of the risk assessments. So Christine, our executive director of Human Resources, reviewed any violent incident that occurred in the past year in our district to determine were there any patterns of violence, places that violence occurred, the same type of violence, to see if there are gap areas that we could identify that needed to be addressed through that records review. The second risk assessment that we had to do was much larger than that. It was one that needed to be done at every single building and location on our campus. So every single school, transportation, DO, to determine where our gap areas were in safety and security and where we needed to put in place mitigation strategies so that we could prohibit proactively violent acts. That was really beneficial, and it led us to the next step of some of the things that we're doing for safety and security. We also had to develop a full violence prevention program, which is what you're seeing today, and all of the trainings that are correlating with this policy. And then we had to be in full compliance as of May 3rd, which we were as around May 7th. We're just rolling it out today, because we have all of our new staff and all of our staff here. And then on Tuesday, we'll be taking buildings and grounds, transportation, food service, and doing the same. So everybody in our district will have it. Kyle's also videotaping it now, so if we have any new employees, they'll be able to see it. And we'll also run the vector training too. You don't have to do that this year. And so what do we want you to accomplish today when you leave? We want you to be able to understand what exactly workplace violence is, what is the law, and why the program is in place in our district. We want you to understand the identified risks and the mitigation that the district is taking and will continue to take as we build our action plan to make improvements in both our infrastructure and the structures of our building. We want you to really walk away and understand, if I am part of a violent incident, how do I report it? Where do I get help? And then what opportunities are available when it comes to professional development and training affiliated with violence prevention and safety and security as a whole. And just understand that the advisory committee will review this process on a yearly basis to say, where were our gap areas at the end of this year? What did we accomplish? What did we not? Do we see any patterns? How many violent acts took place? What are people reporting? I don't really understand this clicker. It's not working now. The laser's working. Christine, would you mind just going up and switching it? I don't know if the battery is down. I know the next slide is success criteria. So how will we know we're successful when? It's if you can say, I know where this form exists, I am able to report, I know who I need to report a violent act to, and I can review the policy because I know where it's located and how all of this connects to me and what trainings I can take. And so you'll see that the state of New York has given me an additional title. I am the Workplace Violence Officer now as well, and Christine is the management official, meaning I will roll this out to you and make sure that everything is in place in accordance to law, and Christine will be the person who receives those reports and takes action on them. And so, just like a vector training, in just a minute I'm going to stop and ask you to take 5 minutes to read policy 6190. However, what I really want you to take away with before reading that is to understand that the district is committed to the safety and security of its employees, and we understand that workplace violence can and may have a place in our establishment, and we want everything to do to mitigate that and prohibit it from happening. And if it does happen, that it will not be tolerated, and that all workplace violent reports will be investigated thoroughly and action will be taken based on the situation at hand and the outcomes that would be relevant to that situation. Also, it talks about all of you being responsible for creating an environment of mutual respect. I think that goes without saying. But that expectation that we value one another and that we hold each other in high regard and that you don't take violent actions against one another, but more importantly, that it's not just about you. It could be anyone. It could be a parent. It could be a student. It could be a visitor. It could be somebody who's coming in that could be an intruder. So there are multiple people that this law protects you against. So take 5 minutes and please read the policy, and I'll see if you have any questions.
I can get one from behind the stage. I was just talking out loud. Is there one backstage?
Yeah. I'll give you one more minute. Does anyone need additional time? Right. Are there any questions on the policy that you just read? I won't ask you questions like Dr. does. He read it thoroughly and can answer the question. But what I want you to really take away from the big picture of that policy is what is workplace violence? Because it's important that you understand what that looks like. So I already talked about in the last segment that it doesn't always mean it's you against you. It can be any other employee, it can be former employees, it can be students, parents, visitors, individuals who have no connection to the workplace but enter the workplace, or an individual who has a personal relationship with an employee. So it can be any of those people. Number 1 up here talks about a threat, right? So workplace violence could be an attempt or a threat, whether verbal or physical, to inflict physical injury upon an employee. What I want to talk about is our district threat assessment team. So often, if there's a threat made, the district threat assessment team will look at it and determine whether it's transient or substantive. From that, then action is taken place. This is a little bit different because that's proactive in nature. This is almost reactive. So if something happens, then what, right? So it really is around that infliction of physical injury, but it can be verbal or physical. It's any intentional display of force which would give an employee reason to fear or expect bodily harm. It's intentional and it's wrongful physical contact with an employee without their consent that entails some injury. And it's stalking. You stage 5 cleaners out there, it doesn't work. Stalking an employee with the intent of causing fear of material harm to physical safety and health of the employees when stalking has arisen through and in the course of employment. So this is also subjective to how you're receiving that too. So please take that in. Perception does come into place in some of these incidences, right? So this is a lot to unpack and understand. And when it comes to students down here, what I talked about the last time with Perkins is you have the little bitties, right? So what is a violent act from them? Because this includes students, right? What does it equate to? Is it a student that's unregulated? Is it developmentally appropriate? So when you're making a decision, you have to take in the big picture of those pieces as well, right? Sometimes a student isn't intentionally doing it, so it's going to be up to you. We're not going to persuade you one way or another, but you have to really take in all of the considerations when it comes to this scenario. And then I want to just talk about all of the pieces that I mentioned briefly and the Workplace Violence Prevention Advisory Committee, because they are really the ones that collectively came together to determine what our next action steps would take. And I talked about the risk assessments, both the record review and the site assessment. That consisted of all bargaining units and identified district employees to do those walkthroughs. And once we did those walkthroughs, we talked about what is needed from what we found. And then we put this training program together, as well as these professional development opportunities that you will see here today, and throughout the year on the district platform and in your buildings. No one is going to be made to go to anything but this by law and then our emergency response management system. Everything else is just available to you if you choose to access it. And then we're going to identify some mitigation strategies. I'm going to share with you by law what action steps we are taking, and that advisory committee board will hold us to task. So at the end of the year, they're not going to only review what we've done and haven't done as a district to mitigate violence, they're also going to take a look at what reports have been submitted. What are the patterns? What are the trends? Where did we see violent acts? And then do we need to correct something as a district in that area? So this will be cyclic year after year. And so I just wanted to highlight what we learned and what action steps that we are taking as a district from the site risk assessment. What is in yellow I'm going to talk to you about, because these are your responsibilities that you will have as educators. It doesn't require you to do much, but it's just something that we need you to do to help us. So when we look at general, these were just items that the risk assessment said we needed to look at. Here's where we're taking action. There was a lot more than that, but here's our action steps. We need to identify some procedures when you're outside, right? So every building does things a little bit differently when they're outside and a lockdown happens or a lockout happens. How are we going to align those practices to ensure that you're safe if something happens when you're outside? So we're going to start working on that. What I need you to do is solidify that evacuation maps are posted at each door in your room. So we've already done that for you. You don't have to put them up. I just need you to check. We put them up. We've checked. We've had our security staff go around. I need you just to double check when you walk in there and make sure that evacuation map is in that room right by your door. And then all electrical panels we have to ensure are locked. So if there's any point that you see one that's not, please report it to your principal. We believe we've done that, changed and replaced any locks that were not efficient. When it comes to security, we had so much in place, and I can't explain to you enough how far ahead we are as a district. I would say we are probably the leading district in Wayne County when it comes to the things that we have to mitigate any violent act. We have armed security, we have unarmed security, and I believe that has made a huge difference in who enters our premises and our buildings. But we are going to look to solidify those subs if a security officer is out. We're looking to add additional security for different events that we typically wouldn't have security at before. We usually have them at the athletic events. This time we're going to be looking at events like a musical performance, for example. If you chose to have them there, I'm looking at Laura. If you wanted them there, all you have to do is make that request for those evening events, and we'll make sure that they're there for you. What we need your help with is that we are requiring all staff to have ID badges with them at all times. Preferably wearing them, if not with you. The reason being is that I know we have a lot of construction people on site as well, and in Ed's absence, and with our interim assistant superintendent for business, I've taken over grounds and facilities as the main person. And so I have requested through Watchdog, and they have shared with their workers that if they don't have badges on, they can't be on our premises. So I would expect the same from you to have those badges just in the event of an emergency so that we can all identify ourselves And we're also going to be adding additional card readers to the doors so that there's more access from the doors that people go in frequently, so that those badges would open those doors, and in an emergency, your badges would be shut off too. So we're looking to have that capacity in the future. So we're really going to be moving away from the small fobs and doing everything with our badges, so keeping them on you. At the elementary schools, you have not received new security cameras yet, but we have submitted a grant that would allow and pay for you to have all of those cameras come in. We did that with the first round. We were able to outfit the high school and the middle school. The goal was to take some of those cameras and replace it down at the elementary buildings, but we made a determination that those cameras are too outdated to do the job that we want to do. So we're seeking that grant to get AI. So we have artificial intelligence on the new cameras, so we can say, oh, that person right there in the flowered shirt, we could look you up and in about 2 minutes find you throughout the day if we put in certain codes. So we want those in the elementary building as well. So in November we'll know if we get that funding. If not, we'll make adjustments in the budget process to move forward. We already have installed, we just have to operationalize panic buttons. So each school will have 2 panic buttons, and your principal will talk to you about where they are. What is a panic button? You pull it or push it, and it will automatically go directly to 911 and put your school in a lockdown. Please do not push it unintentionally. That's all I can say, because the state troopers will come with their rifles, and we will not be able to leave until they do their clearing. So it has to be in, that clear-cut, defined emergency that you pull that button. But what's really positive about that, and one of the reasons we're moving to the TAP app, is that everything is connected. Those buttons will be connected to the TAP app, which will be connected to 4Dscape, which will be connected to the 911 center. So 4Dscape, which is one of the sessions that's running today, is a company that has access to all of our computers. Once we hit tap and it's no longer a drill, our cameras automatically activate with them, or they will when it's fully operational. They can pinpoint the location where we called 911. They'll be able to drill down and immediately have law enforcement on the phone to say, it's at this entrance, it's in this hallway. They have all of our color-coded maps. So this system's pretty integrated once it's fully running and functional. So there's some kinks in it, like we know that's going to happen because it's brand new and it's connected to everything. But once it's working, we're going to be front and center with having very high levels of security for ourselves and our students. We have added an emergency contact list in every room. You will have red folders that will have those lists and a variety of things in them. We are asking you to take your red folders with you during every fire drill, during every emergency, to grab them. Only because last year we had an incident where all of the systems went down, the electricity went out, the Wi-Fi went out, things just weren't connecting, and we needed to rely on that old school folder. And it will also have a list of all your students in there, and it's pertinent for subs to have that too. So we've updated them with new information, and you'll get a new set of those this year. And Carrie can talk more about that in your opening meeting. Where we need to really work on some pieces is central office or district office. That is not secure at all. I think we feel a little bit more secure because we're in the same building as the police department, but literally anyone can take the stairs or the elevator up and walk in at any time. So we'll be looking to harden that area in some way this year, in a way that makes the most sense. Our parking lots, we'll add security when needed there. Our lighting and all of that is good, and our cameras do reach out to that area, so we're pretty secure. What we have put in place are license plate readers. So at the high school and middle school, when you enter those facilities, a camera will take a picture of your license plate. So if we are searching for anyone in particular, we can just put that license plate in there and we'll know if in fact they're on our campus. So we would have liked to have used it about a year and a half ago when we knew someone was getting out of jail and released that morning, and we had information to believe that they were coming on our campus for a violent act toward a specific individual. We had our SRO and additional police outside looking through the parking lot and waiting at the entrances where this will automatically let us know if they came onto that campus. It won't be used to watch you or anything like that. It's specifically for if a child molester comes on and connects with our system. Is that an alarm going?
It's a drill.
Oh, okay. Good morning. No, that's okay. I thought maybe we were all leaving. I wasn't sure. Okay. Oh, okay. And then I'm just going to ask you to make sure that when you leave your classrooms that you lock your doors and close your windows and make sure that your storage and equipment areas are locked. What you will notice is that you have door shades this year on your doors. Those are to be used solely during a lockdown. They're not to cover your classroom windows like when you're in session. When a lockdown goes into practice, they will be what you use to pull down. They're already installed. It's a quick Velcro, and it goes right down. Nobody will be able to see in your room. So for those that have areas that students go during the lockdown where some students can be seen, at no point should anyone be able to be seen with those shades. So they're up. Another area that we have to focus on this year is having a safety plan for, I know we talked about outdoor when you're outdoors, but indoor and outdoor athletic events. When we're on the turf during a big football game or in our gymnasium during whether it's music, a band, or did I say it wrong? No, yeah. Okay, I apologize. Or, a basketball game where we pack the house, what happens if an emergency happens? So we'll be working on plans around those areas this year to solidify those pieces. The bus garage needs updated Wi-Fi. I don't know if you've ever tried to call there. We've dropped some lines, but it's still very difficult. Something's not working, so we'll be assessing that. And then field trips. Verifying attendance at the beginning and end of every trip. Not that you don't do that. I don't mean to be patronizing. I know I didn't when I was 22 years old. I went from Midtown Mall, the monorail. Anyone remember the monorail at Midtown Mall? To Chase Towers to the train station, and I left 3 of my first graders. And luckily, a parent brought them back, and no one was any of the wiser, but I failed to take attendance on that day. So it's just a reminder that with our littles, sometimes they walk off. Sometimes in a chaotic event or just in a general field trip, they can sit down and you think you have them, but making sure you take attendance at the beginning, end, and even middle, and then briefing your chaperones who are with you regarding emergency procedures, what to expect if there's a violent event, what to expect if there's a lockdown, any of those pieces up front. So those are the determined action steps. What I really want to talk about is that's what we're doing now, but we've gone above and beyond throughout the past 3 years. And so some of the new things that you'll see this year is you'll see numbers on all exterior doors. So when you're walking in, you'll notice that every door is now numbered. Those numbers are now on a color-coded map. Your rooms and your hallways are color-coded. So you'll notice on your windows, there should be a color-coded number on the outside of your window. You also should notice that there's a color-coded number on the inside of your door. And that came from the incident that happened in Gananda. When they thought that there was an active shooter in the school, there was a girl in a classroom who was calling 911, but didn't know what room she was in. Because students don't pay attention. If they're going to so-and-so's class, they may not recognize the number. So if you have to call that number, you can say, right now I'm in white 135. That's color-coded on the map. The police have that, or DScape has that, and they can drill right into that room. In Gananda, they had to get the girl's name, they had to get the teacher, they had to get the section, and they had to cross-reference their schedules before they could figure out where she was located. So we've made those changes, and we're very proud of them. And then when you walk down the hall, what you'll notice is there's going to be like a street sign that comes off your door. They're in the process of being made now. Some of them may be installed, but we're hoping within the next 2 to 3 weeks that they'll all be done and up. That way, if law enforcement is going through the school to address something, they're not turning their heads to see the door number. They're looking straight ahead and they can see where they need to go. And that was noted during the summer. We had active shooting drills here with the Wayne County Sheriff. They used our building and trained about 30 officers, so they were able to see some of the different landscape of our floor plan, which was huge. We're also going to have a command center at district office on the first floor. It's brand new. It's going to have monitors that will allow us to see every school and what's happening, and in the event of a critical incident, it will serve as that command center. So that's exciting to us. And we have door contacts that are now on every door, so if you leave it open, it will let security know that there is an open door, so doors can't stay open throughout the night or for an extended period of time that will let folks in. So we're really excited. Those are just some of the things that we've done just in the past year. But that doesn't mean that a violent act won't exist. We know that we can be as safe and secure as we hope to be, and we can be proactive, but it doesn't mean that something's not going to happen, as you know. So what do you do if something happens? Basically, how do you report that this incident occurred according to this law? So you'll see that under documents and resources on the HR page, that you will have a workplace violence incident report that you would need to fill out if you were reporting a violent incident. I'm going to ask you to just take a minute, no longer than a minute, and just review that form. So if a violent incident happens, this is the form that you would fill out. It'll be there electronically. You can submit it electronically. Right now it's just on the website. Eventually we're just connecting to get it set up. So you can submit it electronically or drop it off. More than likely, if something happens, you'll be working with us through this process. It's not just going to be a form that you turn in. Christine will be involved, your building principal will be involved. To ensure that you're okay and that an injury did not occur. But if an injury does occur alongside of this, the second form that you will need to fill out is the C2F. So make sure that you do this in alignment with the one for an injury. Once those are done, the district will complete a full confidential investigation in accordance to OSHA and identify the root causes of that incident. And then based on that investigation, we are allotted a reasonable opportunity to either correct the activity, correct the policy, or correct the practice. So basically what it's saying is if something happened in an area that was not well lit, right, we have to correct that on your behalf. In the same token, if it's something that someone did against you, we would be taking action on that. So it's a dual responsibility based on how and when and where the situation occurred. But we will take each one of these reports seriously. I know in the past we've had people come to us to say and this person's doing this, I feel threatened, this is like some of their behavior. We've worked through that with them. But oftentimes they don't want to report it because they fear retaliation. So there is a policy regarding that 3420, and that ties very closely and directly into this policy of 6190, and that would be enforced as well during this process. And then yearly, our committee will review all of these reports just like we did in creating this program to see if there's any distinct patterns, gap areas, or corrections that we need to make at the end of the year to make our safety and security stronger to mitigate strategies around violent acts. Always go the opposite way. So what does the training program look like? These are all offered today, and the two that are yellow are the two that the committee said they really want in collaboration with this violent act law. Like, how do you de-escalate? What are those techniques? And then how do you create a sustained supportive environment so that we can be proactive in, those potential acts. We then added a variety of other things in connection to that we believe enhances the culture and climate around safety and security, right? So you had to go to this by law. We're also having you go to the new Emergency Management System Protocol and Procedure, which is the TAP app. But we are also running sessions on behavioral threat management, because remember, sometimes a threat can go through there versus here. And we can determine and help solidify whether or not it's transient or substantive, and whether we need to follow that person and case manage them, because that's a huge piece too, and do interventions. And that's all part of threat assessment. 4Dscape is that system that I'm talking about that will take over our cameras. It's like Battleship, right? So they'll grid our entire campus, and it'll say, CJ is where the intruder is. And it will go right down, and that camera will zoom in, and they'll have complete access to that. It's very, very impressive. We have restorative practices, situational awareness, stop the bleed, and then CPR and AED. And that's kind of close to my heart, because I have a daughter who needs an AED on a regular basis. But also, just last year, we had an incident here in our pool area where right in front of their child, as many of you know, a dad fell over and needed that AED immediately. And we had people who were trained to grab it and provide that CPR that were on site that didn't miss a beat. And some of them were our students that did that. So hugely important, because you never know when or where you might need to use that, not necessarily just in a school. So these are the trainings that we feel will mitigate some of the strategies to really make our culture and climate safe, secure, and mitigate, again, those violent acts. And lastly, we're going to review everything that happens this year. We're going to continue to update and create new policies and procedures along the lines of our action items, and then we'll assess at the end of the year. What questions do you have? Hopefully you're not bored out of your mind, and you know that we take safety and security very seriously, and that's why all of this is happening. Yes?
Are we supposed to be notifying the parents beforehand about our safety drill?
We have to by law this year.
And so, if a parent, they have to download the app for parents to get those, or can they sign up there?
We will be communicating through Parent Square, so that is our main form of communication to parents.
So everything beyond parents where our best bet is to make sure parents know that those notifications will be coming through.
Yeah, so it is, we ask that all parents sign up for Parent Square, and that is our premium mode for communication.
Last year, we only had one parent who was not connected.
Yeah, we have a really high percentage rate of connectivity, and we can look at that too. And if we know that someone doesn't have access, we can make an accommodation to them. But by law this year, we have to inform, we don't have to inform the date, we have to inform that a drill will be happening in that week for a lockdown. Not for like a fire drill and general drills.
I have another question.
Sure.
Now, this system only works if the phone is active, correct?
What phone? Your phone?
Right, the recipient phone, when you send out those notifications, it's only going to work if that phone is active, or does it bypass like 911?
I guess I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
So, say if you have a person who doesn't pay their phone bill, their phone is up, will they still get that parent square pushed through if they don't have a connection service?
No.
No, okay.
But they can get it through email too.
Yeah, I just worry about the Wi-Fi. I know we're going through the Transition Affordability Act, and just to access the Wi-Fi, that would be hard if you didn't have it.
If you don't have, a telephone, you're not, even if it was old school, like if you didn't have that communication source, we wouldn't be able to get in touch with you. So when we send it out, it'll go through Parent Square and it'll go to phones and through email, however you sign up to get that accessibility. What other questions do you have? Yes?
If something, if an incident doesn't fall under workplace violence, meaning it's not physical, meaning it's verbal threat or, something that's not physical but you're still very threatened by it, where does that fall? Does that fall under like bullying policy or
So it could fall under DASA. It could also fall under our district threat assessment, right? So if a threat was made, you could come to, I would say go to an administrator and talk it through, or go to a team member and say, this, if you feel comfortable, this is what happened, where should it lie? Because there are some gray areas, right? And in that district threat assessment team, what they'll do is they'll take a look at that threat, and then they'll determine, was it transient, was it said in anger, was there intentionality behind it, and is there a plan to execute that threat? And those all will correlate to determine where you should report what. That threat assessment team can take that threat, they can go through that whole process, and if it's found to be substantive, then intervention steps will take place to mitigate whatever is going to occur for both the victim and for whoever made that threat to ensure that they don't follow through. If it's something that falls more in this area, we can guide you to where to go, or if it's a DASA, we can guide you in that direction. So, and Christine is a great confidential person from HR. Like, if it's something that you don't want to discuss, Christine can discuss it and hold it there and direct you where to go, or Carrie, your principal, would be more than willing to direct you with what would be the best. So in the end, we're excited about everything that's happening. We know that there's going to be some glitches, so we ask to be patient as we roll out the new tab. But in the end, when everything is operational, we're going to be in an amazing spot when it comes to safety and security overall in this district. So thank you for your patience through this presentation. And in the last group, there was a lot of questions, and Christine took some information down because there may be a few more things that we would want to align that we didn't think about. So as you're going through this process, you're looking at the red folders. We've updated them with some great information in there. If there's anything that comes to light, please inform Carrie of that so she can bring it back. In our first administrative council meeting and in our first principal alignment meetings, we're going to be looking at right up front what's working, what's not, and what have you noticed that we didn't see to correct. So please make sure you're giving her that information so she can bring it back. I'll stay here for questions. If not, you are free to go. Thank you.